I'm looking at my wife Linda lying on the wet asphalt, blood trickling from her split lip, and thinking about how fast everything can go to hell. The fake cop standing over her has a plastic badge hanging crooked on his uniform, the kind you'd buy at a costume store. Rain's drumming on the metal roof of our carport, mixing with the sound of my heart hammering against my ribs. Your wife was resisting arrest for Homeowner Association violations, he growls, flexing his knuckles like he's proud of what he just did. Behind him, Karen Miller and her twin sister Sharon are standing in matching pink cardigans, both wearing the exact same smug smile. The smell of gasoline from their idling car cuts through the rain-soaked air. I take a step forward, and every muscle in my body remembers Afghanistan, remembers what these hands can do when pushed. Let me see your badge number. The fake cop, his name tag says Rick in crooked letters, puffs out his chest. You questioning my authority? Linda catches my eye from the ground, shaking her head slightly. Don't do anything stupid, Tom. But when Rick reaches for those plastic handcuffs again, something breaks loose inside me. 3 moves, that's all it takes. Grab his wrist, twist counterclockwise, apply pressure until I hear the snap. Rick screams and drops to one knee, clutching his broken arm. There's your authority, I say, helping Linda to her feet. Karen's already got her phone out, recording everything. You see that? He just attacked a police officer. This man is dangerous. The neighbors are gathering now, Mrs. Peterson from across the street, the Johnsons from next door, all of them with their phones pointed at me like weapons. In 30 seconds, I've gone from victim to villain. Sharon steps closer to her sister, their identical faces twisted with victory. We warned you, Tom. The association has rules. Your little military medals don't make you special here. I want to tell them about the real police officers I've worked with, about the difference between a man who serves and protects versus some wannabe thug in a Halloween costume. But Karen's already uploading the video, and I can see the caption forming in her head. Violent veteran attacks officer over simple citation. Linda's gripping my arm, her fingers digging in through my sleeve. She knows what I'm capable of better than anyone, knows why I wake up some nights in a cold sweat, why I keep the blinds drawn facing the street. The rain's getting heavier now, washing Rick's fake badge clean of mud. He's whimpering about pressing charges, about assault, about how I'm going to prison. But all I can focus on is the way Karen and Sharon are looking at each other, like they've just won the lottery. You ever have that moment when you realize you've been played? When you see the trap closing around you and understand it was set long before you walked into it? That's when it hits me. This wasn't about any violation. This was about something bigger. The generator coughed once more, and the porch went dark. By morning, that 30-second video had spread through our neighborhood Facebook group like wildfire. The headline made my stomach drop. Former military attacks police officer over wife's citation. The comments section was a feeding frenzy. Always knew there was something off about that guy. PTSD much? Get him out of our neighborhood. Poor officer was just doing his job. Linda found me staring at my phone in the kitchen, scrolling through message after message from people who'd waved at me for 15 years. Now they were calling me a menace. Tom, you need to see this, she said, sliding a piece of paper across the counter. It was an official-looking citation on City of Millbrook letterhead. Apparently, our doghouse was architecturally inconsistent with neighborhood standards. Our mailbox was improperly positioned. Even our garden hose, coiled neatly by the back door, was somehow a safety violation. $5,000 in fines, due in 30 days. This is garbage, I said, crumpling the paper. Half these violations don't even exist in the real code. That's when the phone rang. Linda answered, her face going pale as she listened. That was the bank, she whispered after hanging up. They want to schedule a meeting about our mortgage, something about irregularities in our payment history. I felt that old familiar tightness in my chest, the same feeling I'd get right before an ambush, when the enemy's moving pieces you can't see yet, but you know they're there. The knock on our front door came at exactly noon. Through the peephole, I could see Karen and Sharon standing on our porch, both holding clipboards and wearing identical expressions of fake concern. Thomas Harrison? Karen called out sweetly. We're here for the mandatory property inspection. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. What inspection? Sharon held up an official-looking badge. Environmental Health Services. We've received multiple complaints about unsanitary conditions at this address. The badge looked real enough, but something felt wrong. Maybe it was the way they kept glancing at each other, like they were sharing a private joke. Or maybe it was the camera crew I spotted across the street, pretending to film a gardening segment for some local show. "You got a warrant?" I asked. Karen's smile never wavered. "Oh, we don't need one for health violations, Mr. Harrison. That's City Ordinance 247.3. Surely a smart military man like yourself understands how laws work." They pushed past me into the house, cameras flashing as they documented every corner. The coffee stain on our kitchen counter became evidence of poor hygiene. Linda's collection of ceramic owls was a dust accumulation hazard. They even photographed the inside of our refrigerator. "This is harassment," Linda said, but her voice was shaking. "This is compliance," Sharon replied, snapping a picture of our bathroom towels. "The association takes community standards very seriously." 20 minutes later, they handed me another citation, this time for failure to maintain sanitary living conditions and non-compliance with environmental health standards. Another $3,000 in fines. As they walked to their car, I heard Karen talking into her phone, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Oh yes, it's worse than we thought. The place is a disaster. I honestly don't know how anyone could live like that." Mrs. Peterson was watering her flowers, but I caught her staring. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away and hurried inside. The message was clear. "You're not one of us anymore." That evening, Linda cried for the first time since her father died. Real tears, the kind that come from somewhere deep and broken. I held her on our couch, the same couch Karen had just labeled a furniture safety hazard, and wondered how many other families had sat exactly where we were sitting now. Have you ever felt the ground shifting under your feet while everyone around you pretends everything's normal? The morning brought our first anonymous letter. I found it wedged in our mailbox, the same mailbox Karen had cited as improperly positioned the day before. The envelope was plain white, no return address, but the message inside was crystal clear. "Get out before we make you. Your kind isn't welcome here." Linda was getting ready for work when I showed her the note. She worked at the elementary school downtown, 23 years of teaching second grade. Kids loved her. Parents requested her specifically. But when she tried to start her car that morning, nothing happened. "Battery's dead," I said, popping the hood. But it wasn't the battery. Someone had loosened the cables just enough to kill the connection. Clean work, professional. "I'll drive you," I offered, but Linda shook her head. "Tom, I need you to see something first." She led me to our front window and pointed across the street. Mrs. Peterson was standing in her driveway, talking to a man in a suit. As we watched, he handed her what looked like a business card and shook her hand. "That's the third house this morning," Linda said. "Same guy, same routine." The man looked up at our house, said something to Mrs. Peterson, and they both stared directly at us. No hiding it, no pretending they weren't discussing us. Just cold, calculating assessment. When I walked Linda to work, 3 miles, past neighbors who suddenly found their lawns fascinating whenever we approached, I felt like we were running a gauntlet. The grocery store clerk who'd chatted with us for years suddenly became too busy to make eye contact. The mailman, Jerry, who always stopped to talk about baseball, crossed the street when he saw me coming. By the time I got home, there was a crowd gathering at the community center. I could hear raised voices through the windows, Karen's distinctive laugh cutting through the noise like a blade. I slipped around back and found a window cracked open. What I heard made my blood turn to ice. "Property values have dropped 8% since the Harrison incident," Karen was saying. "We've had 3 potential buyers back out just this week." A man's voice I didn't recognize. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" "Unstable veteran with a history of violence," Sharon chimed in. "Police say he has PTSD episodes. The wife's been covering for him, but neighbors are getting scared." "What about the fines?" another voice asked. "Oh, they can't pay them," Karen said with satisfaction. "Banks already questioning their mortgage reliability. Give it another week, maybe 2, and they'll be desperate enough to sell." That's when I understood. This wasn't about violations or community standards. This was about real estate, about clearing out the undesirable neighbors to make room for someone who'd pay full market value. I thought about all those business cards, all those conversations happening while Linda and I weren't looking. How long had they been planning this? How many other families had they pushed out the same way? When Linda got home that evening, I'd picked her up in our backup truck. She found me sitting at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, writing down everything I could remember from the past month. Every strange visit, every new violation, every neighbor who'd suddenly turned cold. "What are you doing?" she asked. "What I should have done from the beginning," I said, treating this like a military operation. She sat down across from me, her teacher's instincts kicking in. "Talk to me." "They're not just harassing us, Linda. They're systematically destroying our reputation, our finances, and our social connections. It's a coordinated campaign designed to force us out so they can profit from our desperation." "But that's illegal, isn't it?" I looked up from my notes. Probably, but proving it is another story. That night, someone threw eggs at our house. Not random teenager stuff. Strategic placement on every window facing the street. When I went outside to clean it off, I noticed something else. Fresh tire tracks in our flower bed, and a small electronic device nestled under our porch railing. A camera, still warm, still recording. You ever wonder how far people will go when they think they're untouchable? The electronic eye under our porch was still blinking when I heard footsteps on gravel. "You finding everything interesting out there?" The voice came from behind our fence, rough, whiskey-soaked, but familiar. I looked up to see Mike Reynolds leaning against our gate, a beer in one hand and something that looked like worry in his eyes. Mike lived 2 streets over, retired detective who'd moved here after his wife passed. We'd shared maybe 10 conversations in 5 years, mostly about the weather. "Depends what you consider interesting," I said, pocketing the camera without explaining it. Mike stepped into our yard without invitation, the kind of move cops make when they're reading a situation. "Heard you had some trouble with the Homeowner Association." "News travels fast around here." "Faster when Karen Miller's doing the telling." He took a sip of beer, studying our egged windows. "Funny thing about Karen and her sister. They've been real active lately. Lots of visits, lots of meetings." I stopped scraping egg off the glass. "You know something I should know?" Mike glanced around, then moved closer. "What I know is that 3 families on Maple Street sold their houses in the past 6 months. All of them got the same treatment you're getting. Violations, fines, social pressure." He paused. "All of them sold way under market value." "To who?" "That's where it gets interesting. Different buyers on paper, but they all trace back to the same investment company, Pinewood Development Group." Mike crushed his empty beer can with one hand. "Want to guess who sits on their advisory board?" I didn't need to guess. Gerald Pitts. City Councilman Gerald Pitts, the same Gerald Pitts who approved the expanded authority for homeowner associations last year. The same Gerald Pitts whose signature is on every one of your violation notices. The pieces started clicking together like rounds sliding into a magazine. So, the association creates problems, the city backs them up, and when people get desperate enough to sell cheap, Pinewood swoops in with a cash offer. 30% below market, take it or leave it. Mike kicked at our flower bed where the tire tracks were still visible. "They've cleared out 12 families in 2 years, Tom. 12 families who thought they were dealing with busybody neighbors." Linda appeared at our front door, wrapping her sweater tight against the evening chill. "Mike, is everything okay?" "Evening, Linda. Just sharing some neighborhood history with your husband." She walked over, and I could see the exhaustion in her shoulders. "What kind of history?" Mike looked at both of us, then made a decision. "The kind where you find out your problems aren't random, the kind where you realize you're not fighting crazy neighbors. You're fighting a business model." "Business model?" Linda's voice was barely a whisper. "Real estate speculation. Buy low, develop high, sell higher. But first you need to convince people to sell low." Mike pointed toward Karen's house, where lights were blazing in what looked like a late-night meeting. "Karen and Sharon aren't just busybodies, they're employees." I felt Linda's hand find mine, cold and trembling. "How do you know all this?" "Because they tried it on me, too. 6 months ago. Violations for my unkempt lawn, complaints about my excessive noise. Turns out having the TV on after 9 p.m. is disturbing the peace." Mike's laugh was bitter. "Only difference is, I still got friends in the county courthouse. Friends who know how to run paper trails." "Why didn't you fight back?" I asked. "Who says I didn't?" Mike grinned, and for a second I could see the cop he used to be. But fighting back and winning are two different things. They backed off me because I made it clear I'd make their lives expensive. But you, military hero with a temper, you're a better target. The sound of car doors slamming made us all turn toward the street. Karen and Sharon were walking up our driveway, flanked by the same fake cop from yesterday. Rick, still wearing his arm in a sling. "Mr. Harrison," Karen called out in her sweetest voice, "we need to discuss your compliance issues." Mike stepped between them and us. "Evening, Karen, Sharon, Rick." He nodded to each of them like he was taking attendance. "Funny seeing you all together, almost like you're coordinating something." Sharon's smile faltered for just a second. "We're simply here on official Homeowner Association business." "Official business requires official authority," Mike said. "Rick, you want to show me that badge again? The real one this time?" Rick's good hand went instinctively to his belt, where a real cop would keep their credentials. But Rick's belt held nothing but a walkie-talkie that probably connected to Karen's purse. "We don't need to show you anything," Karen snapped, her fake sweetness evaporating. "This is private property business." "Actually," I said, stepping up next to Mike, "this is my private property, and I'm asking you to leave." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Fine, but the violations stand. And tomorrow, we'll be back with the city inspector, the real one." As they walked away, I heard Sharon whisper to her sister, "He knows too much." Mike caught it too. "Tom," he said quietly, "how attached are you to that camera you just found? You ever realize that the war you thought you left behind never really ended?" The camera Mike and I planted in Karen's mailbox started recording at exactly 7:42 a.m. We'd spent the night in my garage, rigging up a system that would have made my old tech sergeant proud. Military-grade surveillance equipment I'd kept from my contracting days, the kind that picks up whispers from 50 yards away. "You sure about this?" Mike had asked around 3 a.m., soldering the last connection. "They're recording us," I'd said. "Time to return the favor." By morning, we were ready. Mike positioned himself at the coffee shop, across from the community center, with a direct line of sight. I stayed home, monitoring the audio feed through earbuds while pretending to fix Linda's car. The first conversation we caught was pure gold. "Gerald's getting nervous," Karen was saying to someone on the phone. "The Harrison situation is taking too long." A pause then. No, the fake inspection worked perfectly. But that broken-down cop Reynolds is sniffing around. We need to accelerate the timeline. Another pause. "Fine, activate Phase 3. Phase 3? I was writing everything down when Linda came out with coffee. "Anything interesting?" she asked. "You could say that." I handed her the earbuds just as Karen's voice crackled through again. "Sharon, get Rick and meet me at the city building. We need the tax assessor's office to find some irregularities in the Harrison property records." Linda went white. "Tom, if they mess with our property taxes..." "They can force a lien," I finished, which gives them grounds for foreclosure proceedings. That's when the second shoe dropped. Mike's voice came through our radio. "Tom, you need to see this." I drove to the coffee shop where Mike had his laptop open, showing me a series of photographs he'd taken through the community center windows. Gerald Pitts was inside, spreading blueprints across the table. But these weren't just any blueprints. They were development plans for our entire neighborhood. "Shopping center," Mike said, pointing to our block. 40-unit apartment complex over here. And then look at this. He zoomed in on the corner where our house sat. Premium commercial space, prime location for a chain restaurant. They're not just buying up houses, I realized. They're clearing the land for redevelopment. 12 families, Tom. 12 families they have pushed out. And we're talking about $20 million in development profits. The radio crackled again. Karen's voice, crystal clear. "The assessor's office is on board. They'll find the irregularities this afternoon. Tom Harrison will have 48 hours to pay a $15,000 tax penalty or face immediate foreclosure proceedings." My hands were shaking as I wrote it down. $15,000 we didn't have, couldn't have, not with Linda's school salary and my disability pension. "There's more," Mike said, clicking through more photos. "Look who just walked into the meeting." The next image showed a woman in an expensive suit shaking hands with Gerald Pitts. I didn't recognize her, but Mike did. District Attorney Michelle Cooper. She's not supposed to be within 50 miles of any real estate deals in this county. Conflict of interest laws. Unless she's making sure those laws don't apply. That afternoon, the knock came exactly as Karen had promised, but this time, it wasn't fake cops or pretend inspectors. This time, it was Sheriff Deputy Martinez and a woman from the tax assessor's office. Mr. Harrison, I'm Deputy Martinez. This is Tax Assessor Williams. We need to discuss some irregularities with your property tax payments. Linda was gripping my arm so tight I could feel her nails through my shirt. What irregularities? Ms. Williams opened her official folder with practiced bureaucratic coldness. Our records show a computational error in your assessments dating back 3 years. You owe $15,437 in back taxes, plus penalties and interest. That's impossible, Linda said. We've never missed a payment. Nevertheless, the debt exists. You have 48 hours to pay in full, or we'll be forced to begin foreclosure proceedings. As they handed us the papers, I caught Deputy Martinez looking uncomfortable. He'd served papers before, but something about this felt wrong to him too. After they left, I called the one person I thought might help, my old Army buddy Jim Costa, who worked as a paralegal downtown. Tom, he said after I explained everything, what you're describing isn't just harassment, it's organized fraud. But proving it? He paused. You'd need documentation, evidence of conspiracy, something that shows the coordination between the association, the city officials, and the development company. What if I told you I might have that evidence? I'd say you better be very, very careful, because if these people are making the kind of money you think they are, they won't stop at fake violations and tax penalties. That night, someone cut our phone lines, clean cuts, professional work, and when I went to check our mailbox, I found it empty, but still warm from electronic surveillance. They weren't just watching us anymore, they were closing in. Have you ever felt like prey? The warm mailbox was still bothering me when Mike showed up at my back door at midnight. They found our camera, he said, holding the smashed remains of our surveillance equipment, but not before we got something big. He handed me a flash drive, his cop instincts still sharp despite 3 years of retirement. 26 hours of audio, Tom, including a phone call you're going to want to hear. We huddled around my laptop in the dark kitchen, Linda asleep upstairs, as Mike fast-forwarded through static to find the conversation that had him driving over in the middle of the night. Here, he said, hitting play. Gerald Pitt's voice came through clear as glass. The Harrison problem needs to be solved this week. I've got buyers flying in from Atlanta on Friday, and they want to see a cleared site. Karen's voice. What about the tax lien? Won't work. I ran his military record. Guy's got friends in the VA who will question the assessment. We need something faster. A third voice I didn't recognize. What kind of faster? The kind that puts him in county lockup for 72 hours, long enough for an emergency foreclosure hearing. My blood turned to ice water. They're going to frame me. Mike nodded grimly. Gets worse. Keep listening. Gerald again. Michelle's got a judge who owes her favors. We file the emergency petition Monday morning, hold the hearing Tuesday while Harrison's still in jail, and by Wednesday the property's in city custody for unpaid obligations. What about the wife? Teacher's pension won't cover the legal fees to fight it. She'll take whatever settlement we offer. The recording went quiet except for the sound of papers shuffling. Then Karen's voice, cold and calculating. What's the setup? Anonymous tip about domestic violence. Neighbor reports hearing screaming, sounds of a struggle. When deputies respond, they find evidence of an altercation and arrest Harrison for investigation. What evidence? The kind we plant while he's at work tomorrow. I stopped the recording, my hands shaking with more than anger. Mike, they're talking about fabricating a domestic violence case. It's worse than that, Mike said, pulling up another file. I've been running background checks on our friends. You want to know what I found? He showed me a series of documents, real estate transfers, LLC filings, bank records he'd somehow gotten access to through his old contacts. Pinewood Development isn't just some investment company. It's owned by a subsidiary that's owned by another subsidiary that eventually traces back to a consortium of city officials and county judges. Gerald Pitts isn't just getting kickbacks. He's a part owner. And District Attorney Cooper? Silent partner. Her name's buried in the paperwork, but it's there. She's been using her office to clear legal obstacles for their developments across 3 counties. Linda's footsteps on the stairs made us both freeze. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, her hair messed up from sleep, taking in the sight of 2 men hunched over a laptop in the dark. "Tom, what's going on?" I looked at Mike, who nodded. She deserved to know. "They're planning to have me arrested tomorrow, Linda. Domestic violence charges, completely fabricated. While I'm in jail, they'll fast-track a foreclosure hearing and take our house." She sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "Can they do that?" "They've done it before," Mike said quietly. "I found the court records, 5 other cases in the past 2 years. Same pattern. Arrest the husband on trumped-up charges, rush through an emergency foreclosure while he can't defend himself, offer the wife a settlement that's a fraction of what the property's worth." "What happened to those families?" "Gone. Scattered. One couple divorced over it. Another man had a heart attack from the stress." Mike's voice was getting harder. "These people aren't just stealing houses, Linda. They're destroying lives." That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you'll find more than you bargained for." Mike looked at the message and cursed under his breath. "They know we've been recording them." "How?" "Doesn't matter now. What matters is they're accelerating their timeline." He started gathering up the equipment. "Tom, they're going to move on you tomorrow morning, early, probably during shift change when the responding officers won't know the background." "So what do we do?" Mike stopped packing and looked at me with the expression of a man who'd spent 30 years in law enforcement. "We go nuclear, all of it. The recordings, the financial documents, the development plans. We release everything at once and hope the media picks it up before they can bury it. And if they don't, then you better have a good lawyer, because by tomorrow night you're going to need one." As Mike left through our back gate, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Fresh tire tracks in our neighbor's driveway and the shadow of someone sitting in a car across the street. They weren't just planning to frame me. They were already watching to make sure I'd be home when they came for me. Ever feel like you're about to walk into an ambush you can see coming but can't avoid? The shadow in the car was still there when I woke Linda at 5 a.m. "We're leaving," I whispered, already pulling clothes from our dresser. "Right now." She sat up, instantly alert the way teachers learn to be. "Tom, what's happening?" "They're coming for me this morning." Mike was right about the timeline. I handed her a small duffel bag. "Pack light, just essentials." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they can't control the narrative." By 5:30, we were driving through the pre-dawn darkness toward downtown, our house and the watching car disappearing in my rearview mirror. But I wasn't heading for the police station or the courthouse. I was heading for Channel 7 News. "Tom, this is crazy," Linda said as we pulled into the news station parking lot. "It's 6 in the morning." Morning shows start early. I grabbed Mike's flash drive from the glove compartment. "And this story's too big to bury in the afternoon news cycle." Inside, I convinced a sleepy intern to get me 5 minutes with morning anchor Jessica Chen. 5 minutes became 20 when she heard the recordings. 20 became an hour when she saw the financial documents. "Mr. Harrison, if even half of this is true, we're looking at systemic corruption involving city officials, the courts, and private developers." Jessica was already calling her producer. "But I need corroboration. Sources who will go on record." That's when my phone rang. Mike's number. "Tom, where the hell are you? They just served a search warrant on your house. Armed deputies, the works. They're claiming they found evidence of domestic assault." "What kind of evidence?" "Broken furniture, holes in the drywall, Linda's torn clothing scattered around the bedroom." Mike's voice was tight with anger. "Professional job. Stage scene looks completely convincing." I handed the phone to Linda so she could hear Mike directly. Her face went through a range of emotions. Shock, anger, then something I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating fury. "Tom," she said after hanging up, "give me that flash drive." "Linda." "No, you listen to me." She turned to Jessica Chen. "I'm Linda Harrison. I've been teaching in this county for 23 years. I know every school board member, half the city council, and most of their wives. If you want corroboration, I'll get you corroboration." What happened next was like watching a master teacher work her classroom. Linda started making calls, not to officials, but to their families. the mayor's wife who'd had Linda teach all three of her children, the city clerk's mother who volunteered at the same church, the county supervisor's daughter who still sent Linda Christmas cards. Within 2 hours, Jessica Chen had 5 sources willing to go on record about pressure from Gerald Pitt's office, 3 more who'd been approached by Pinewood Development with opportunities to sell their homes, and 1 very nervous city employee who admitted the tax assessor's office had been instructed to find problems with specific properties. "We're going live at noon," Jessica announced. "But Mr. Harrison, you need to know. By then, they'll probably have issued an arrest warrant." "Let them," I said. "I'd rather be arrested for something I actually did than framed for something I didn't." At 11:45, as the news crew was setting up for the live broadcast, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. "Tom Harrison?" The voice was smooth, professional. "This is attorney David Walsh. I represent certain interested parties regarding your current situation." "Let me guess, Pinewood Development." "Among others, I'm calling to offer you a very generous settlement, enough to relocate anywhere in the country and start fresh. All charges dropped, all debts forgiven. You just need to sign a non-disclosure agreement and be out of the county by this weekend." Through the studio windows, I could see Jessica Chen getting her microphone clipped on. Linda was sitting beside her, clutching a folder of documents we'd copied. "How generous?" I asked. $200,000, cash, tax-free. I almost laughed. "You know what that tells me, Walsh? It tells me this story is worth a lot more than $200,000 to keep quiet." "Mr. Harrison, I strongly advise you to reconsider. My clients have significant resources and very little patience for bad publicity. Your clients should have thought about that before they tried to steal my house." I hung up and walked into the studio where Jessica was already introducing the story to a live audience. "Good afternoon, I'm Jessica Chen with a Channel 7 investigation into what appears to be systematic fraud involving homeowner associations, city officials, and real estate development in our community." As she began playing the audio recordings, I watched the phone behind the news desk light up like Christmas. Viewer calls, probably. But also something else. The kind of calls that happen when powerful people realize their secrets are being broadcast to 30,000 households. Linda reached over and squeezed my hand as Gerald Pitt's voice filled the studio. "The Harrison problem needs to be solved this week." "Tom," she whispered, "look at the monitor." On the screen showing viewer comments streaming in real time, the same message was appearing over and over. This happened to us too. You ever watch your enemies realize they picked the wrong target? The studio phone was ringing non-stop when Sheriff Deputy Martinez walked through the news station doors. I recognized him from the tax assessment visit, but this time he looked different, uncomfortable, like a man who'd been ordered to do something that didn't sit right. "Mr. Harrison," he said, his hand resting on his cuffs but not reaching for them. "I have a warrant for your arrest." Jessica Chen kept the cameras rolling. "Deputy, are you arresting Mr. Harrison in connection with the corruption allegations he's just made public?" Martinez glanced at the camera, then back at me. "Domestic violence charges, based on evidence found at his residence this morning." "Evidence that was planted," Linda said, standing up from her chair. "Deputy Martinez, you searched my house. Did that look like a real crime scene to you?" The deputy's jaw tightened. He'd been a cop long enough to know the difference between genuine domestic violence scenes and staged ones. "Ma'am, I just follow orders." "Whose orders?" Jessica pressed. Before Martinez could answer, his radio crackled. "All units, be advised that arrest warrant for Thomas Harrison has been rescinded pending further investigation." The studio went dead quiet. Martinez touched his radio, frowning. "Dispatch, can you repeat that?" "Warrant rescinded. Return to normal patrol." Jessica looked at her producer, who was gesturing frantically from behind the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting word that District Attorney Michelle Cooper has called an emergency press conference for 3 p.m. today." That's when my phone rang, Mike's number again. "Tom, you need to get down to the courthouse, now." "What's happening?" "Your broadcast just caused an avalanche. The State Attorney General's office is here. FBI Financial Crimes Unit just pulled up, and Gerald Pitts is in handcuffs." 20 minutes later, Linda and I were standing on the courthouse steps, watching Gerald Pitts do a perp walk past a crowd of reporters. Karen and Sharon Miller were nowhere to be seen, but their lawyer was. the same David Walsh who'd offered me the settlement. District Attorney Cooper's press conference was a masterpiece of damage control. She announced the formation of a special task force to investigate irregularities in certain real estate transactions and promised full cooperation with federal authorities. She didn't mention that she'd been a silent partner in Pinewood development, but the FBI would find that connection soon enough. Mike appeared at my elbow, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "You want to hear something beautiful? 3 families who sold under pressure are filing to reverse their transactions. The City Council just voted to suspend all Homeowner Association enforcement pending review. And the tax assessor who hit you with those back taxes, she just resigned. What about Karen and Sharon? Flight risk. Somebody tipped them off before the arrests started, but their bank accounts are frozen and their names are all over the Pinewood documents. They won't get far." As we walked back to our car, Linda stopped suddenly. "Tom, look." Mrs. Peterson was walking across the street toward us. The same Mrs. Peterson who'd been avoiding us for weeks, who'd been talking to that man in the suit about our house. "Tom, Linda," she said, her voice shaky. "I owe you both an apology." Mrs. Peterson, "No, let me finish. That man who came to see me, he offered me $10,000 to sign a statement saying I'd witnessed you threatening Linda. Said it would help clean up the neighborhood." She was crying now. "I almost did it. I was so scared of what people were saying about you. I almost believed their lies." Linda put her arm around the older woman's shoulders. "What changed your mind?" "My granddaughter. She goes to Linda's school. When she heard people were saying bad things about Mrs. Harrison, she told me, 'Grandma, Mrs. Harrison helped me learn to read. She would never hurt anybody, and anybody who says she would is a liar.'" Mrs. Peterson looked at me directly for the first time in weeks. 8 years old, and she had more sense than I did. 3 months later, the final pieces fell into place. Gerald Pitts pled guilty to racketeering and fraud. Michelle Cooper resigned in disgrace and lost her law license. The FBI's investigation expanded to include similar schemes in 4 other counties. Karen and Sharon Miller were arrested trying to board a flight to Mexico. Turns out they'd been running the same con in 3 different states over the past 5 years. Mike and I started a neighborhood watch program, not the kind that reports violations, but the kind that watches out for people trying to steal houses through legal manipulation. We've helped 7 families fight back against similar schemes. But here's the thing about winning a war like this. Victory comes with a price. Some neighbors still look at me like I'm a troublemaker who brought unwanted attention to our quiet community. The house 2 doors down has a "for sale" sign that's been up for 6 months because buyers are nervous about the history. And Linda? She transferred to a different school district. Too many parents knew about the accusations, even though they were completely fabricated. She says she doesn't mind the longer commute, but I see how it hurts her to start over after 23 years. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken that settlement offer, $200,000 and a clean slate somewhere else. No media attention, no FBI investigations, no neighbors who whisper when we walk by. But then I remember those 12 families who got pushed out before us, the ones who took the settlements, signed the non-disclosure agreements, and disappeared into anonymity while the machine kept grinding. Mike was right about one thing. They picked the wrong target, not because I'm some kind of hero, but because I'm too stubborn to know when I'm supposed to give up. The irony is that Karen and Sharon and Gerald thought they were running a perfect scam. Small-town corruption, just below the radar, targeting people who couldn't fight back effectively. They forgot that sometimes the most dangerous person is the one who has nothing left to lose. And you know what? If you're watching this on Karenology, maybe you recognize something in this story. Maybe you've got your own homeowner association that's a little too interested in your property value. Maybe you've got neighbors who suddenly turned cold for no reason you can understand. Trust your instincts, document everything, and remember, they're only as powerful as you let them be. Because some battles are worth fighting, even when the cost of winning changes everything.